Hey guys, Fight Junkie here. I just wanted to pop in real quick and give you my 2 cents on the results of the UFC 323 card. My post-fight thoughts will be broken down individually in their own videos, and I will try to keep them short and sweet so I don't bore you too much. Please don't forget to follow me on your preferred platform, like, comment, and share my stuff. As always, thank you so much for all of the love and support, and now let's jump into it. Marin Santos defeats Muhammad Naimov by knockout. The Marin Santos money line at minus 225 cashes. The won't go the distance at plus 170 hits. Santos wins inside the distance at plus 255 is also a winner. We nailed Santos inside at plus 275 pre-fight, spotting his finishing upside. The first 2 rounds had even back and forth action, with neither fighter being totally confident they were leading heading into the final frame. In round 3, Santos landed a calf kick that momentarily took Naimov off balance and a follow-up right-hand right that caught Naimov clean, sending him crashing to the canvas. A few shots later, and that was all she wrote. Late KO saved the plus 265 inside the distance prop play. Who got burned, fading the tough winner. That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out. Mansour Abdulmalik defeats Antonio Tricoli by submission. The Mansour Abdulmalik money line at minus 1,000 cashes. The won't go the distance at minus 900 hits. Abdulmalik wins inside the distance at minus 400 is also a winner. Pre-fight, we took Abdulmalik inside at minus 400, expecting dominance. He took Tricoli down with ease and baited him for a guillotine he locked in 69 seconds. There was never any doubt going into this that Tricoli couldn't hang. Chalky but profitable inside the distance prop play. Does Abdulmalik need stiffer competition next? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out! Iwo Baraniewski defeats Ibo Aslan by knockout. The Iwo Baraniewski money line at minus 185 cashes. The won't go the distance at minus 525 hits. Baraniewski wins inside the distance at minus 185 is also a winner. Fight Junkie post-fight thoughts. We hit Baraniewski inside at even money pre-fight, banking on his power edge, and by the looks of the closing line, so did a lot of people. The Polish hammer connected early, a right hook wobbled Aslan, but that wasn't the end of the story. Aslan came back with his own fiery, and these two were playing rock'em, sock'em robots, until finally Aslan's aggression left him open, and he was caught with a counter that ended the slugfest. Not the easiest cash of the night, but it came in. Debut of the year vibes. Who tailed this violence? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out. Jalen Turner defeats Edson Barboza by knockout. The Jalen Turner money line at minus 300 cashes. The won't go the distance at minus 400 hits. Turner wins inside the distance at minus 200 is also a winner. Fight Junkie. Post. Fight. Thoughts. We hit Turner inside at minus 150 pre-fight odds, foreseeing his length exploiting Barboza's age. A nasty elbow sliced open Barboza early, and Turner dropped Edson early with a jab, then finished him with a flurry of combos that saw Barboza hit the deck for a third and final time. Edson was outclassed from the start and was never in the fight. A perfect prop prediction cashed. How savage was that ending? Does Barboza retire now? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out. Upset alert. Bruno Ferreira defeats Marvin Vettori by decision. The Bruno Ferreira money line at even money cashes. The won't go the distance at minus 115 hits. Ferreira wins by decision at plus 375 is also a winner. Fight Junkie. Post. Fight. Thoughts. Ferreira frustrated Vettori's grappling with his takedown defense, outstriking him 98-72 via powerful hooks and low kicks that hobbled Marvin in round 3. Close unanimous decision, but Hulk's output edged it. Plus 375 decision prop, screamed value, and it came in. There's never such thing as an easy night against Italian wrestlers. Is Ferreira contender material now? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out. Fair Ziam defeats Nazim Sadikov by knockout. The Fair Ziam moneyline at minus 130 cashes. The Won't Go the Distance at plus 130 hits. Ziam wins inside the distance at plus 325 is also a winner. Fight Junkie. Post. Fight. Thoughts. Ziam's counters dissected Sadikov. Round 1 featured sharp jabs staggering Nazim, then round 2 elbows opened a cut before ground strikes forced the stoppage at the bell. Plus 325 inside the distance prop was undervalued gold. French precision at its finest. Who out there underrated Ziam's finishing ability? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out. Macy Barber defeats Karine Silva by decision. The Macy Barber moneyline at minus 175 cashes. The Will Go the Distance at minus 220 hits. Barber wins by decision at minus 110 is also a winner. Fight Junkie. Post. Fight. Thoughts. Barber grinded Silva with superior wrestling, landing 5 takedowns and controlling over 9 minutes on the mat despite Silva's sub-attempts in round 1 and round 3. Striking was close, but Barber's pressure sealed it. No pre-fight prediction, but textbook game plan execution by Barber. Bros cooked if you expected fireworks here. Does Barber deserve a title shot next? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out. Chris Duncan defeats Terrence McKinney by submission. The Chris Duncan moneyline at minus 160 cashes. The Won't Go the Distance at a whopping minus 1,200 hits. Duncan wins inside the distance at minus 145 is also a winner. Fight Junkie. Post. Fight. Thoughts. Wild slugfest from the jump, but Duncan weathered the storm, landed a huge elbow that dropped McKinney. After a little ground and pound, it was time to switch it up and go for the finish. Duncan changed position and sunk a deep anaconda choke for the comeback submission victory. McKinney's power nearly ended it, but Duncan's resilience won out. Nice cash on the inside the distance prop. What a turnaround. Who had Duncan surviving those bombs? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out. Upset alert. Manuel Torres defeats Grant Dawson by knockout. The Manuel Torres moneyline at plus 180 cashes. The Won't Go the Distance at a whopping minus 600 hits. Torres wins inside the distance at plus 220 is also a winner. Fight Junkie. Post. Fight. Thoughts. Torres starched Dawson in 90 seconds. A simple game plan of being patient and waiting for his opening was all it took for him to find a left hand that sent Dawson crashing to the canvas. A little additional ground and pound and the fight was over before it ever got started. Dawson's wrestling pressure backfired against Torres' explosive athleticism. Underdog, cash big across the board. No action from us, but respect the Mexican streak. How many of you envisioned Dawson getting folded that quick? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out. Jan Blachowicz and Bogdan Guskov fight to a draw. The Will Go the Distance at plus 145 hits. Blachowicz and Guskov draw at plus 6,600 is also a winner. Fight Junkie. Post. Fight. Thoughts. Blachowicz and Guskov traded bombs in a light heavyweight war, with Guskov dropping Jan early in round 2. Blachowicz rallied with a late third-round knockdown to salvage the majority draw, 29-28, 28-28, and 28-28. Volume was even, but those bookend moments defined it. No pre-pick here, but plus 6,600 on the draw. Absolute steal for sharp eyes because draws and violence like this are rare gems. Who scored this one differently? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out! Peyton Talbot defeats Henry Cejudo by decision. The Peyton Talbot money line at minus 280 cashes. The will go the distance at minus 200 hits. Talbot wins by decision at plus 105 is also a winner. Fight Junkie. Post. Fight. Thoughts. We got in late on the Talbot by decision prop at minus 150 pre-fight, predicting his reach and volume would neutralize Henry's wrestling. Talbot outstruck Henry 112-65, stuffing 7 of 9 takedowns while mixing knees in the clinch. Henry landed a big overhand in round 2, but gassed without being able to take Peyton down. Clean performance from the prospect, exposing Henry's age. This was a solid cash, but there were times in there where Henry was ready to go. The body shots were eating him alive, and he had to use every ounce of grit he still had to hear the final bell. Does Henry retire for good this time? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out! Tatsuro Taira defeats Brandon Moreno by knockout. The Tatsuro Taira moneyline at minus 120 cashes. The won't go the distance at plus 190 hits. Taira wins inside the distance at plus 325 is also a winner. Fight Junkie. Post. Fight. Thoughts. Round 1 saw Moreno locking up the sub attempt for most of the round but not being able to finish Taira. In round 2, everything changed. Moreno came out striking, scoring nicely, but Taira shut it down with a takedown. This time on the ground, there was no counter, and Taira scrambled to Moreno's back. With a body triangle locked in, Taira flipped Moreno over, flattened him out, and began to unload heavy ground and pound. Although Brandon was trying to move, he was in a horrible position and forced the ref to jump in and stop the fight. Moreno's first career knockout loss, controversial ref stoppage aside. We didn't have action here, but Taira's poise screams future title threat. Bros cooked if you faded the Japanese phenom's power. How does this reshape flyweight? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out. Upset alert. Josh Van defeats Alexandre Pantoja by knockout. The Josh Van moneyline at plus 200 cashes. The won't go the distance at minus 190 hits. Van wins inside the distance at plus 445 is also a winner. Fight Junkie. Post. Fight. Thoughts. Pre-fight, we hammered Alexandre inside the distance at minus 115, banking on his grappling edge to submit Van early. But 26 seconds in, Alexandre blew out his arm after landing a head kick on Van and being pushed to the mat. As he was falling to the ground, he extended his arm and ouch. They say it's an elbow dislocation from the awkward torque, leading to a freak TKO stoppage. Van was about to capitalize instantly with ground strikes, but the injury stole the show, making him the second youngest UFC champ ever. Brutal L on our pick, as Alexandre aggression backfired spectacularly. Free money for dog bettors, but ain't no satisfaction in winning via medical mishap. Did the arm pop make you wince? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out. Upset alert. Petr Yan defeats Merab Dvalishvili by decision. The Petr Yan moneyline at plus 330 cashes. The will go the distance at minus 425 hits. Yan wins by decision at plus 650 is also a winner. Fight Junkie. Post. Fight. Thoughts. Pre-fight. We backed Dvalishvili by decision at minus 180, expecting his relentless pace to overwhelm Yan again. Instead, Jan's elite takedown defense, stuffing 18 of 20 attempts, neutralized the grind, turning it into a striking clinic where Jan's precision outlanded Merab 142 to 98 in significant strikes. Merab pushed hard in rounds 3 and 5 with volume, but Jan's counters and footwork proved superior, reclaiming the belt in a masterclass. Deadass, we got cooked fading Jan's evolution, probably never again doubting his adaptability for reals. Who saw Jan stuffing that many takedowns? That's it for this episode of Fight Junkie. Fight Junkie out.